The Palestine Solidarity Alliance was formed back in 2001, immediately after the World Conference Against Racism. Um, and over this period, we've continuously doing advocacy work, mobilizing for protests. I think there's been too many massacres in Palestine, but we've also built a grassroots network nationally with different groups, civil society organizations, trade unions, and so forth. I think it goes back to even pre-Nakba. This was brewing over a century. The imperial colonization, the British mandate, followed by the very unfair handing over of Palestine unilaterally to the Zionists or part of it, and then all of the resistance that followed from there. So October 2023 was an inevitability of a continuous struggle against occupation and what many have called a slow genocide, particularly in Gaza. So when we look at it, we have to see the entire context from the time or from 1948 and before. But the Nakba is critical because that's when we began to see the real horror of what Zionism is capable of. Remember, these are the people that introduced terrorism to the world with letter bombs, with killing of British soldiers, and then the Nakba, where villages were destroyed, women raped, houses burned, people over 750,000 people at the time, and that was huge in the world population at that time, were expelled from their homes, towns, and villages. So the Nakba was critical, and from then the resistance continued. I mean, one of the most telling moments was what happened in Lebanon, in Sabra and Shatila, sponsored by the Israelis, backed by the Americans, and the entire refugee camp attacked, killed people for hours being killed, machine gun. And what we saw then was the impunity that Israel enjoyed. You know, they were immune to any sort of international sanction. And therefore, they continued with this. That is why this genocide, and the numbers are staggering, and we'll hopefully get a better picture should this ceasefire hold. We complain when children miss school for 2 days. It's 2 years that all institutions have been destroyed. We complain about long queues in our hospitals. Almost all the hospitals have been bombed. Even before October 2023, 80% of Gazans were living on handouts, were living on UN rations. So they were already being starved, and food was already being used as a weapon of extermination for the Palestinian people. So when we talk about October 7th, we have to understand the reality of the Palestinian people, that it was either we resist and die or we die quietly. And they chose that they would fight with dignity and preserve themselves as a people. It was a desperate act of survival. What has been exposed to the world is the hypocrisy of world leaders. I think that has been critical. The impotence of institutions like the United Nations, who cannot act and defend innocent people. The failure of multilateralism and the difficulties that the world will face with a unipolar world dominated by the United States with its own capitalistic, imperialistic agenda. So that's what has been exposed, I think. I think media houses in particular have been exposed in our own country, and politicians that are on the take. Even right-wing Americans are beginning to question AIPAC's impact on their own politic. And so there's a clear exposure of Israel's propaganda and its Hasbara and its concerted effort to hold power within the key spaces of Congress and media houses. I think there's economy in everything. I don't think it's necessarily strategic from their point of view, except that they win favor of the Americans and they avert for a little while the attack on themselves. I think that in the back of their mind, they must know that Israel is an expansionist state and America is an imperial state. It is just a matter of time before they attack. Doha was a clear example of that. And they, I think, are fearful more of that and therefore appeasing and even collaborating with the Zionists. I think that they are fearful of regime change in their own country or a revolution in their own country. The demands of the Palestinian people for human rights to be respected, the demands for reparations, the demands for the right to return, the demands for self-determination, the demands for justice and accountability for all the genocidaires, from the foot soldiers and privates to the generals and the politicians, and also some retribution against an Israeli state that has become sociopathic. We know it's not just the leaders, it's a society that has prompted and supported this. Over 80% of Israelis were polled by their own polls asking for the eradication and extermination and the Holocaust. We sort of carry that struggle in a local level. So right now we are demanding more from our government. It's all great and well that you went to the ICJ, but we need to see some real action. If you are serious about holding Israel accountable for this genocide, which you took a case to the ICJ for, then you shouldn't be having an Israeli embassy in your country. And you shouldn't be allowing for any kind of trade, particularly with energy resources like coal, with Israel. And you should be sanctioning politicians who go on paid-for junkets to promote apartheid Israel and speak against the government's policy. And you should also be sanctioning journalists who go on paid-for junkets to Israel by Friends of Israel and the Zionist Federation. And you should be holding to account those that promote racism, because Zionism, as it stands as an ideology, is promoting racism, is promoting the privilege of one over the other, and promoting it not just in a way of entering a market or something, but in promoting the theft and occupation of a people's land through genocide.